Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. Ryan Kaufman coming your way once again from Eugene, Oregon. Day 2 of my expedition to the state of Oregon. Air Force women's basketball tonight will be taking on the Ducks. That one will tip off at 7 o'clock right here on Extra Sports 1300 if you are so inclined. I'll talk about the matchup a little bit later, but certainly a fitting way. And they have another non-conference game on Saturday or on Friday, excuse me. Don't want to be here an extra day than I already am. On Friday, and I'm just kidding, it's been lovely so far. Lots of rain, but lovely. They have another non-conference game on Friday, and that will be the end of the non-conference schedule. But given where this team is, off to the 9-1 start, best start in Division I history for the program, to take the competition up a notch with the Oregon Ducks, a team that was ranked in the top 25 just a few weeks ago. I think it's going to be a great test tonight for Stacey McIntyre's team. I'm looking forward to calling it just down the street. I can walk to the arena, Matthew Knight Arena, here in Eugene. So that's coming up at 7. You and I have business to attend to in the meantime. Appreciate you tuning in, by the way. How rude of me. Wanted to tell you that I appreciate you. Whether you're listening on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and well-being for all. And yes, veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. Let's start with the Nuggets, shall we? What a roller coaster ride that was last night, 130 to 129. The ending, like is the case with any great movie, is all that people want to talk about. But the fact that the Nuggets basically squandered a huge lead to get into the position that they got into in order for the heroics to happen kind of falls by the wayside, which is fine because it's not how you start, it's how you finish, right? That's what the saying is. So Nuggets jump out to an early lead. They're up by almost 20. And then Sacramento comes storming back, and they lead the game by 10 in the fourth quarter, if you did not watch. Then what we had, and Friday was a nice little appetizer for last night's main course. Friday was the appetizer of, oh, that's the Jamal Murray we've been waiting for all season. 20 points, played very well, Nuggets win. But really, what is the secret sauce of this Nuggets team? What really makes them go and makes them so special, a championship level team, is when late in a game, they go to that two-man Murray Jokic game and just, they don't miss shots. And that's what happened last night. Sacramento didn't miss any shots except for the last one with DeMar DeRozan kind of fumbled it at the end there, a chance to potentially win the game. But on the offensive end, it was Murray, Jokic, the two-man game, and just being one of the most unstoppable things in the National Basketball Association. There are very few things in the NBA that are more predictable than the Nuggets two-man game, but predictable in a you know it's coming and you still can't stop it way. But that only works if Jamal Murray is right. And for these last two games since coming back from injury, he is right. He looks like the Jamal Murray of old. Last night, he scores 28 points. He hits what proved to be the game-winning shot. And it was just, again, that two-man game of Murray and Jokic, and then who's going to be the third guy, right? Because it's as lethal as Murray and Jokic together are, it's who's going to be that third guy that makes it all the more unstoppable. And last night it happened to be Aaron Gordon, who scored 27 points. Michael Porter has been that guy in the past as well, but last night it was Aaron Gordon. But that's why I've said during the rough stretch that the Nuggets went through, the only way out is through with this team. There's no magical elixir. There's no trade that Calvin Booth can make given the Nuggets, lack of assets. It has to be with the personnel that they currently have on the roster. And most notably, Jamal Murray. Because you know what you're going to get from Nikola Jokic on a nightly basis. You know when Aaron Gordon is healthy, what he brings to the table. Michael Porter. It's Jamal Murray. If that Jamal Murray shows up when it matters the most, all these other things like lack of depth, the bench unit not being very good, they're playing DeAndre Jordan now as Nikola Jokic's backup. Not ideal. Christian Brown and whether he's a adequate replacement for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. All of these other questions. Michael Porter's regression the last 2 years in the postseason, all of it doesn't matter as much if Jamal Murray is right, and you saw it last night. As long as they're within reach of a win late in the game, and they can go to Murray and Jokic on the two-man game, that's all they need. Now, the one thing I would say is some of those other issues could manifest itself in a series against Boston, for instance. Right? But that's a completely different level. That's a completely different conversation. And it's a bridge that the Nuggets can cross when they get to it. Right now, it's about getting this team right so they can move through the Western Conference and get that opportunity to dethrone the Boston Celtics. But they're not forget playing Boston, they're not even getting out of the West. If the Jamal Murray that has shown up the last 2 days does not make an appearance in the postseason. Now, maybe some of it is Jamal Murray hearing what is being said about him. A lot of people theorizing that, like maybe Jamal Murray has heard the noise around him and he has come back more focused and ready to go. One can hope. I keep going back to I just think he's physically right. This is a guy who can pull motivation from a lot of different places. Okay, but it only works if his body is right to be able to do what he needs to do. So I think it's the physical state of Jamal Murray that is more of an indicator of what you've seen the last 2 nights than mentally. And again, I brought this up yesterday. Load management has to be on the table for him. It just has to be. We learned last year that the number 1 seed, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So if the Nuggets drop a few games down the stretch because they're resting guys and end up with the 3rd seed, that's okay. Got to think bigger picture. That's what Michael Malone did not do last year, and it appeared to cost the Denver Nuggets. But The thing right now is we're sitting here on December 17th. They got to get there first, right? They got to get to that point where losing a couple of games down the stretch is only going to drop them to the third or fourth seed because of, and they're not far away, but right now you got to put yourself in. It's the same way with the NHL. I've been talking about with the Avalanche. You got to put yourself in the position you want to be in when the calendar turns. Okay, if you aspire to be a playoff team, you got to be in that 6, 7, 8, 9 range when January rolls around. If you want to get home court advantage in the first round or for multiple rounds, you got to be close to a top 4 seed going into January, because when you have 3, 4, 5 teams between you and where you want to go, you're depending on too much to be able to get there, in addition to your own play picking up. So the Nuggets, over the last few games, they've won 3 in a row now. They're starting to make their move here. They got an important 2-game stretch next week, the 23rd, and then Christmas, both against the Phoenix Suns. Those feel like important games. Those feel like seeding games when all is said and done. So the Nuggets are starting to turn around, but what's the catalyst? It's Jamal Murray. Everything the Nuggets want to accomplish is dependent on Jamal Murray's role in this, understanding that Nikola Jokic is the constant. The variable that the Nuggets need to have under control is Jamal Murray's health. I think load management's on the table, but we'll see how he fares in the next few games. Look good against the Clippers after, 2 weeks off, week and a half, whatever it was. Look good last night. I do wait a little bit for the other shoe to drop, but that wasn't last night. So keep riding it out, and if he picks up a knock, then I think that's when the conversation has to be had of whether they preemptively keep Jamal Murray out of games. I know the NBA doesn't want to hear that, but there's a reason teams do it, and Jamal Murray feels like the right player to do something like that with. But he's healthy, he's rested, he's ready to go, and he looks great. Looks great the last 2 games. And Nuggets have 2 big wins against 2 playoff caliber teams in LA and Sacramento. Take your thoughts on last night's game, 719-24-7, 13-13. Just getting going with this Tuesday edition of Drive Time Sports. Coming up next, now that the Avs have their biggest problem seemingly solved, now it's time to address their next biggest need. That dude's having a career year right now for the Vancouver Canucks. Good for him. He's already matched his career high with 10 goals, 3 of them now at the expense of the Avs. So Mackenzie Blackwood was solid, wasn't spectacular, but certainly the biggest thing with the Avs goaltending, right? Just consistent, capable, consistent. And last night, Mackenzie Blackwood may not have been quite as good as he was in his debut, but still good enough for the Avalanche to win the game, especially when you get how many power plays did they get last night? 3, 4, 5? I think it was like 3 or 4. And you don't score on any of them. The next thing for the Avalanche to figure out is this power play. Now, I don't want to be too much of an alarmist because I've seen this movie before, as you have. The Avs will do this. They'll go through this stretch with their power play where they're just incapable of scoring goals. And it will seem like they haven't scored a power play goal in forever. And then Altitude or ESPN or TNT will put up the season numbers when it comes to power play. And what this prolonged drought will have done is move the Avs from like second to fourth. Always kind of laugh at that. When the Avs go through these spells where you're just like, what is wrong with the power play? It's been forever, and now it's 6 of their last 54. 6 of 54. And still, they're one of the better power play teams in the league, which speaks to how hot they were to start the season. But this has happened before to the Avalanche. And it's one of the most confounding things about this Avalanche team. It really is. Because you look at a team with the talent that the Avs have, the talent that thrives in time and space. And on the power play, you get time and space. Now, the team you're going up against kind of buttons down the hatches a little bit and compacts in and they block some shots. But the Avs have freedom of movement all around the ice when they're on the power play. You think the Avs, and for much of the last few years, they have been about as good as anyone, not named the Edmonton Oilers. But it's the same premise, right? When you have a power play unit that is McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar. Forget the fourth guy, whether it's Nichushkin, whether it's Lehkonen, whether Ross Colton spent time on that top power play unit last night. Forget who the fourth. You and I can be the fourth guy. If you have those, 3 guys, and then Devon Toews, don't let me forget Devon Toews, but with that group, they should seemingly never go through a rough patch when it comes. It's certainly not a 6 for 54 drought. It is quite confounding. And I got to imagine it's the case for Jared Bednar, who last night said it's been one of their prevailing issues the last handful of games. And it really has been, because even before they made the trade for Mackenzie Blackwood, you remember Alexander Georgiev's last start was against Detroit. He was very good. So it's actually been a little bit since we've talked about an Avalanche game where they didn't get solid goaltending. The power play has been their biggest issue. And I watched last night, and it's just the tiniest of slip-ups that inhibit this team's ability to score on the power play. Like someone overskates a puck, or Nathan McKinnon trying to push the puck along, and it's knocked down out of the air by Kiefer Sherwood, and he takes it the other way for a shorthanded goal. Like, just these little bounces, little things here and there. When the power play is not working, it completely short circuits everything that the Avs want to do. And you almost saw it on one of the power plays. Cale Makar is skating up the near boards, nearly lost the puck. He was able to get it back, and he shot the puck in, and there was a flurry out in front. But it's like these little things, like they get in too much of a hurry almost. That's what it seems like at times, is they get in a hurry. But you can understand why they get in a hurry sometimes, because especially last night, talking about that specific power play where Cale Makar brought it into the zone, that was their only opportunity on Thatcher Demko that entire power play. The first two power plays for the Avs, they generated 3 whole shots. That was it. So and then what happens the next power play? They remember that they only have generated a couple of shots, and they're like, we got to get going early. And then they get in too much of a hurry, and then there are some fumbles of the puck or some passes that have a little too much heat on them and not handled by the opponent, and then it completely short circuits everything they want to do. I will say that if you take these two things, the goaltending and the power play, I think there are many more answers and much more reason to believe that the Avs can fix it when it comes to the power play. Now, they have the guy they think will fix their goaltending issues in Mackenzie Blackwood, in addition to Scott Wedgwood. But we talked about it when Blackwood was acquired. There are very few guys that you could see throughout the league that might give the Avs a chance to upgrade over Alexander Georgiev. Mackenzie Blackwood happened to be one of them. So if there's only a couple of options for the Avs in goal to improve that situation, they have far more options to get back on the right side of things when it comes to power play. 96, 29, 8. Right? Those are the guys. So I guess the way I would describe it, this is like a December problem, and I know it's because it's in December, but it's a problem that will pop up during this season. But when you look back on the year, and that's been the case with the Avalanche the last few years, when you look back, maybe you remember it, but it was so far beyond it. I fully expect this team to figure out the power play, especially when the reasons why they're not succeeding on the power play are so blatantly obvious. But credit Vancouver. I mean, that's a good hockey team. And let's not forget this too. I know the Avs should be able to score on the power play against anyone, right? That's the standard. But you look at some of the teams they've struggled with. Nashville is the top penalty killing unit in the league. Carolina's third. Dallas is sixth. Washington is fifth. New Jersey is eighth. Pittsburgh is ninth. Even Vancouver is top half of the league. So that's also an important part of the story here. It's not just the Avs. Like, some credit has to be extended to the teams they're going up against, and they just so happen to be running up against some of the best penalty killing teams in the league. Still, does that manifest itself into a 6 for 54 stretch? Probably not. And that's where the Avs need to tighten things up a little bit on the power play, but they're going up against really good penalty killing teams. So, given what the Avs have gone through with the goaltending and the roller coaster ride with all this and completely replacing the room, trust me, the power play is a much easier fix than in goal for the Colorado Avalanche. But they do lose last night 3-1, not off to a great start after someone, I won't name names because that's just unfair, proclaimed on this radio program just a few days ago that the 4 of 5 stretch that they're on, 4 wins and 5 games on the road, could turn into like 10 of 12. Well, my margin for error is shrinking a little bit because after that road trip, the Avs have now lost 2 of 3. Got to pick it up a little bit. 719 24/7 13-13. One other aspect of last night's game, Nathan MacKinnon did not score in the game, did not have an assist either. Still 3 up on Leon Draisaitl and Kirill Kaprizov, with who each had 2-point nights in the last couple of nights, if that makes any sense. So Nathan MacKinnon's still leading the way, but I've talked about this before. His ice time is ridiculous. Right? Once the Avs are healthy, he's not going to be playing as much because he shouldn't. But if you're invested in the Nathan MacKinnon for the Art Ross Trophy thing, something to watch out for moving forward. Leon Draisaitl is heating up. He's got 15 points in 7 games in December. He had 19 the entire month of November and 13 in October, and he already has 15 in 7 games. Kirill Kaprizov, I think Nathan MacKinnon can hold him off because Kaprizov is in the same boat as Nathan MacKinnon. The Minnesota Wild have no choice. They have to ride Kirill Kaprizov for as long as they can. And he's right now would be my pick for the Hart Trophy. But Leon Draisaitl is the one I would look at that may in the next couple of weeks perhaps surpass Nathan MacKinnon, which to me is fine. Right? Nathan MacKinnon's you would still love for Nathan MacKinnon to win another MVP, right? You look at Nikola Jokic, how great is it that he's closing in on his 4th MVP? But you don't want it to come at the expense of the bigger goal. And you know who doesn't want it to come at the expense of the bigger goal that the Avalanche have? Nathan MacKinnon. So once everybody's healthy, once everybody's back after the first of the year or a little bit past that, I would expect Nathan MacKinnon's ice time to come down a little bit, and perhaps that would allow a Leon Draisaitl to overtake him for the Art Ross race. Way too early Art Ross standings on December 17th. 719 24/7 13-13. Coming up next, the Denver Broncos have had another game flexed so they can be seen by a wide national audience, and this is exactly what Sean Payton wanted to come to Denver for. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Broncos game against the Cincinnati Bengals, and this was hinted at by Sean Payton yesterday, has indeed been flexed. Instead of a Sunday game in the Broncos getting 10 days to prepare, it will be played on Saturday. Still, I think his thought process in terms of allowing Thursday's game to be flexed to Thursday was sound. Um, Now, a lot of this can be a moot point if the Broncos beat LA on Thursday. But I don't know how many people saw LA getting beat, let alone blown out by Tampa Bay the other day. So circumstances have changed. But at the time Sean Payton made the decision or gave the NFL the okay to flex the game, having additional time to prepare for an unfamiliar opponent and one that you need to beat in order to clinch a playoff spot. Again, this was at the time, is an okay trade-off for less time to prepare for a opponent that you're very familiar with and a game where the stakes aren't quite as high. Now things have changed because now Thursday is for seeding. And the Broncos can officially clinch a playoff spot with a win. But the Bengals game now being flexed to Saturday. So if you're keeping track at home, Broncos play Sunday, Thursday, and then the following Saturday after Christmas. And then it will be on to Kansas City week 18, and who knows what that game's going to look like, who's going to play, what are the stakes for that one. But that's the schedule for the Broncos the next couple of weeks. Sean Payton said something yesterday that I didn't find that surprising. I've heard him talk about this kind of stuff before, but given the context of what the Broncos are on the verge of accomplishing, I thought it was worth him bringing back the comments. He talked about basically wanting, when he was deciding where to coach, right? He knew he wanted to come back from his TV gig and coach in the NFL again. And when he was assessing where he wanted to coach, one of the things that he had very high on his list is a place where it matters, where football matters. Now, clearly, the place that gave him the best chance to win would have been his top priority, which is why you heard rumors that he wanted the Charger job. But that didn't come available at the time where he wanted to get back into the NFL. But he also wanted to go to a place where it mattered. And think about it, Sean Payton in his first head coaching gig in the NFL goes to a place where the team, and no one could see this coming, but because of Katrina, the New Orleans Saints became, almost bigger than a football team. Right? And you're never going to replicate that. You never want to replicate that because the circumstances surrounding it were obviously terrible. But just the idea that he wants to go to a place where if he builds a winner, it will be appreciated. And Denver's one of those places. And then you go down the list and he talks about the ownership and all that kind of stuff. Maybe on paper, it wasn't a situation that was more ready-made to win than the one that Jim Harbaugh stepped into this year. But certainly Sean Payton saw the path and understood that with the support of Greg Penner, he would be able to execute his vision on what he wanted in place. And lost a little bit in all these extensions is, I mean, those cost money. I know George Payton has to manage the salary cap, but when you see, the signing bonuses that are given to these players, like, that's where Greg Penner comes in, right? Greg Penner's willingness to sign off to these large signing bonuses, and we don't talk about them as much because we're worried about the cap ramifications. We're worried about the length of the contract. But like these signing bonuses, and I won't get all into the business of football, but that's a cost incurred by the owner. And there are other owners in the NFL who aren't willing. For the longest time, you wonder in a salary cap league, how can these ultra rich owners like a Jerry Jones set themselves apart? Well, this was how. We can all knock Jerry Jones's, ability to negotiate and how it seems like he's always paying top dollar, but also the signing bonus that's looped into that. Not a lot of owners can afford it like Jerry Jones can. Broncos have one of those owners now. So if Sean Payton and George Payton go to Greg Penner and say, hey, for instance, the latest example, Garrett Bowles, right? We're ready. We want to keep him here long term, but we may have to up the signing bonus in order to keep him from entering free agency in a month. And Greg Penner's, I wasn't in there, but I'm sure Greg Penner's like, okay. I mean, the guy changes out the sod at Empower Field every other week. Like, there are some costs that aren't really that great to him. So that's where you hear the commitment from the owner. Well, what does that mean? It's a salary cap sport. The costs are controlled. Well, for the contract, yes, but the signing bonuses are a little bit different. But getting back to Sean Payton building a winner in a place where it matters. Denver, for a long time, was a strong market for the NFL, as you might imagine. Right? Denver's Broncos, very popular team nationally, right? Maybe not the Steelers, Cowboys level or the 49ers level, but very popular. And so when they were good and when they had Peyton Manning, even when they had Tim Tebow, you would see the Broncos in the late window, and CBS or on a rare occasion Fox would bank on that being able to carry that window. And so now you're seeing, now that the Broncos are relevant, now that the Broncos are good, these TV partners of the NFL are like, give me some Denver Broncos. Right? Some of it is the consequence, for sure. And the TV partners are planning just like the Broncos are to say, well, if the Broncos don't end up winning on Thursday, that game against Cincinnati will mean a whole lot. But also it's Bo Nix. People want to see Bo Nix. I think they do. I think they want to watch Bo Nix. I think they want to watch Pat Surtain and Nick Bonito. Now, they're not players that drive, viewership like Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, but I think because the Broncos have surprised so many people, there are so many NFL fans that are kind of playing catch up here. And like, who are these guys? My team might be going up against them in the playoffs. I might be watching this team in the playoffs. I got to figure out what they're all about. So I think there's a curiosity factor. There's a the consequence of the game that kind of drives this, but two, the NFL likes it. The NFL doesn't need any market. Like, let's just be clear about that. They don't need any market. But Denver is one of the markets they like. Denver is one of the teams that they like. And if they can justify for these other reasons, the consequence of the game, the intrigue surrounding the team, to put them in a prime window where they're the only game in town, so to speak, they're going to do it. And it just kind of goes to what Sean Payton is talking about. Like, it doesn't take much for the Broncos to be relevant. We've been talking about the Broncos mired in irrelevancy for a long time, right? But that didn't mean that it wasn't a short trip to relevancy. They're there a little bit earlier, but they're there. And now on Thursday, again, having Thursday night all to themselves against the LA Chargers, they have a chance to clinch their first playoff appearance in nearly a decade. Speaking of this season, who is more deserving of the Defensive Player of the Year? If I told you that you could only stump for either Pat Surtain or Nick Bonito to be the Defensive Player of the Year, kind of like with CU and Travis Hunter and Shedeur. Everyone had to kind of drop Shedeur to focus on Travis Hunter to make sure he gets over the top. If you had to do the same thing with the Denver Broncos, who would you stump for, Nick Bonito or Pat Surtain? Talk about that as we continue on this Tuesday edition of Drive Time Sports here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Tuesday. Ryan Kaufman with you in Eugene, Oregon tonight. Air Force taking on the Ducks. 7 o'clock tip right here on Extra Sports 1300. It seems like our stream is working a little bit better than it did yesterday. So you can head to our social media accounts, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, at XTRA Sports 1300, and you can watch the show and take in all that is my hotel room in Eugene. And then later this week, the backdrop will change to my hotel in Portland, which will probably look a lot like my hotel in Eugene. It's very difficult to showcase the differences in hotel rooms, I have found. Lamp, window, bed, a TV. That's about it. Now, I don't, stay at the nicest hotel. So perhaps there is some other amenity or aspect to a hotel room that I don't even know about because I've never stayed in a hotel room nice enough to have, oh, look, it's a full kitchen. Or, well, I guess I've been in it. They have honeymoon suites and things like that, which so I guess there is. But I mean, basically, I can't showcase a lot. I got my window, I got my lamp. There's like a couch here. You can kind of see. Anyway, appreciate you joining me on this Tuesday. Broncos short week getting ready for the Chargers, and I think there is a bit of a debate going on, and it reminds me exactly of what happened with the Heisman Trophy. So I think many people who were proponents of either just the Buffs in general, they're Buffs fans, or they were a proponent of Travis Hunter, I think subconsciously feared that they would split the vote, Travis Hunter and Shedeur. Right? Now, interestingly enough, even someone like Dan Patrick had both of them on his ballot. He talked about it yesterday. He voted for Ashton Genty, then he had Travis Hunter and Shedeur 2 and 3. But I think there's this subconscious, like, if we support both of them, if we make a case that both Shedeur and Travis Hunter should be in New York, then they might split the vote, and that would put somebody who doesn't have a teammate nearly as good as Travis Hunter or Shedeur Sanders and Ashton Genty, that would put him over the top. You've seen it before, right? It's been the argument against Nathan McKinnon. Well, yes, Mikko Rantanen with him. So I think through that, a lot of people push Shedeur's side. It's like he still arguably was the best quarterback in America. And I'll be careful not to say this too loud, given the city that I'm in. I mean, Shedeur was better than Dillon Gabriel this year, right? I mean, we can agree on that. Cam Ward, I think, is the better debate. Now, Dillon Gabriel deserves credit because he led the nation's best team and was prolific, right? It's not that Dillon Gabriel didn't deserve to go to New York. But could you argue that Shedeur was better? More prolific? I think there's an argument to be made. But it turns out plenty of voters included Shedeur. It just didn't get on enough. I see the same thing, though, happening with the Defensive Player of the Year. Right? You want to consolidate behind one guy. Is it going to be Benito or is it going to be Surtain? Because if both of them are being talked about, now here comes TJ Watt. As if TJ Watt doesn't play with any other good defensive players, but it seems that way because everyone talks about TJ Watt basically wrecking games on his own, and he's able to do that. But like the Steelers have a good defense. I think I could see that being a worry amongst Broncos fans is if we got to consolidate behind one. Is it Benito or is it Surtain? And I don't know if that's true. Now, it's like the Heisman thing. Plenty of voters still had Shador. So could the top 3 for NFL Defensive Player of the Year be Benito, Surtain, and TJ Watt? Could be. But if you had to consolidate behind one, who would it be? I think it would be Nick Benito. And that sounds like a prisoner of the moment take, given what Nick Benito has done over the past couple of weeks. But look, it's very difficult for a corner to win Defensive Player of the Year, not unheard of. And certainly Pat Surtain has put together a year that will push that, right? You can make the case for Pat Surtain being Defensive Player of the Year, and corners have won it before. But the sack numbers are probably the first metric that people look at when voting on Defensive Player of the Year. So Nick Benito, given the season he's had, he was going to be in that conversation because the first place a lot of voters would go, sack leaders. And they'd see Trey Hendrickson, they'd see TJ Watt, they'd see Nick Benito. Now you're adding in the type of plays that Pat Surtain was making. Right? The entire Broncos season changed when Pat Surtain ran back that interception of Gardner Minshew. It was a long time ago, but think about where the Broncos were. First couple of games out of the gate, not great. Raiders game wasn't going great. All of a sudden, Pat Surtain, 100-yard pick six. Broncos win that game, and now look where they are. Completely changed the season. And that's where the Defensive Player of the Year stuff really started. Well, now you have Nick Benito in back-to-back weeks making these game-clinching returns for touchdowns. Now, we know that Jonathan Taylor's fumble is what ultimately swung that game Sunday to the Broncos' favor. But then you had Benito picking off that awful wide receiver throwback to Anthony Richardson. 1 week after he picked off Jameis Winston to seal that game. Or to at least bring the Broncos to a point where, okay, they're not going to lose this game now. It's those kind of plays that stick out to people. And them happening so late in the season when the Broncos are approaching their first playoff appearance in however many years, those are going to stick in people's minds. Now, it's not that Pat Surtain has done anything to be demoted from this conversation. But when you make the type of plays that Nick Benito has made, coupled with the fact that he's top 3 or 4 in the NFL in sacks and is 1 sack off the lead, I think right now you would have to say Nick Benito is the better candidate. That's how significant the plays he has made the last couple of weeks have been. There's and you think about too, in a couple of weeks, Nick Benito is going to be going against Trey Hendrickson. How often do we talk about 2 defensive players headlining a matchup? Well, that's going to be the case most likely. Not going to be so much Bo Nix against Joe Burrow, although that's going to be interesting. It's going to be Trey Hendrickson against Nick Benito. But there's a video floating around social media today of George Paton in the Broncos war room when he took Nick Benito. And he said, whatever pick Nick Benito was, 64, Nick Benito at 64. And then he curses, but like in a good way. Like, wow, we're really going to get this guy. Didn't see that video circulating a lot last year. Did you? I didn't. But now that Nick Benito's having this success, it is. Now, I'm not trying to diminish anything. It's just it would be a weird time to bring it up when Nick Benito was kind of buried on the depth chart, started off really slow. Be a weird time to put this out because then people would be like, what's George Payton talking about? But he was right. He was right. Nick Benito has now emerged to be one of the better pass rushers in the NFL, and that's what the Broncos thought they could be getting when they drafted Nick Benito. And I talked about this yesterday. On the defensive side, he has been the change agent like Bo Nix has been on the offensive side. Now, the defense of the Denver Broncos did not need that much fixing, right? They ended up being a pretty good unit last year after that debacle against Miami. But it was a team that really, outside of Justin Simmons, didn't really force turnovers. And you wondered, with Justin Simmons gone, who would be the one to create those turnovers, especially when you consider that teams are not going to throw at Pat Surtain a lot. Well, Nick Benito has kind of turned into that guy, whether it's him actually making the play or him pressuring a quarterback into making a poor decision with the football that the Broncos are able to pick off. But the emergence of Nick Benito has taken this Broncos defense to the next level. Pat Surtain has been Pat Surtain this whole time. Nick Benito is what's different. Zach Allen, even on the Broncos last year. The emergence of Nick Benito has been almost as significant for the Broncos defense as the addition of Bo Nix has been for the offense. And we'll see if it's recognized with the Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's got a chance, but shouldn't forget Pat Surtain. Especially since he made an interception in that game as well. 719-247-1313. Brett, I want to clarify something. Brett doing a good job of keeping me honest here. I was talking about Sean Payton earlier and how his first choice was LA. And then I talked about how Sean Payton valued going to a place where winning matters. Yes, everything you said, Brian, I won't go through the text, but everything you said pertaining to the LA Chargers and their fan support in that part of the country, you're absolutely right. But that's why I said at the top that Sean Payton's primary goal, his biggest want in a next job, was a place he could win. And with Justin Herbert, and we saw LA like he did, a team that you just felt like, gosh, they're better than this. The charging and all that kind of stuff, if they just get someone to coach some of that stuff out of them, the Chargers are going to be a factor in the AFC. And that's what Sean Payton saw. So I think he wanted to find a place that he could win. Well, when the Chargers job did not come open, then it was between what? Indy, Denver, Arizona. Now, he didn't interview for all of those jobs, but he identified Denver as the place where winning mattered the most, but also gave him a path to be able to win. 719 24/7 1313. Coming up next, the NBA has a new idea for getting you to watch their All-Star game. See if you will, given these changes. Next on Extra Sports 1300. So the NBA is full of ideas these days, trying to get you to watch their product. Now, you may have seen in the news lately that the NBA, I think I mentioned it yesterday, that the NBA was experiencing a ratings downturn. I'll get to that in a moment. But today they have announced a new format for the All-Star game, which will be held in San Francisco at the Warriors Arena this year. So I'll just read straight from what the NBA sent out. 24 All-Stars will be divided evenly into 3 8-player teams. And then a fourth team will be the Rising Stars, the rookie sophomore game. The winner of that will be the fourth team in this. Barkley, O'Neal, Kenny Smith, Candace Parker will be the pickers of the teams. They'll play, one team will play another, and then, semifinals, and then you'll have a finals. And the winner of each game will be, and this is like that Elam ending thing, first one to 40 points wins. So they'll play the Rising Stars Challenge earlier in the weekend, like they do. The winner of that game will be in the mix with these All-Stars. They'll play 2 semifinals to 40 points and 1 final to 40 points. It reminds me a little bit of what the NHL does, right? They do the 3-on-3 thing, Central Division, Pacific Division, Metropolitan Division, and then they play tournament style. Forgive me if I don't think this is the striking of gold the way that the NBA might think it is. And you know who agrees with me? Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant was asked about this today, and he says he don't like it. Now, Kevin Durant wants it to be East-West again. And in theory, I'm down for that. But you know how the NBA, the biggest thing that the NBA could do to fix the All-Star game is not anything that Adam Silver can do. The players have just got to play. What used to be great about the NBA All-Star game, and something that they had, baseball has this, football and hockey could never replicate it. That's the disadvantage that the Pro Bowl and the NHL All-Star game had. You just can't get the same product. You can't. And that's why I am all for the Pro Bowl and the NHL All-Star game trying whatever goofy crap they want to try. Right? Try whatever. I don't think it's going to help, but go ahead and try it, because they just can't bring, because the premise of an All-Star game is the sport that you love now played between 2 teams of the best players. But in football and hockey, because of the physicality, especially in today's day and age, these guys aren't going to do the same things that they would do during the year. And I don't blame them. I understand, but it's what puts the NFL and the NHL in a tough spot. With baseball and with the NBA, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to replicate what they have during the regular season. Now, if they do and you just don't want to watch it because it's not the novelty because of NBA League Pass or MLB Extra Innings, and you see these guys all the time, and because that's part of the All-Star game, right? Is the idea, wow, I can see these players that I never normally see. Well, given where television has gone, we can see all these guys regularly. So that novelty is gone. But that's not what's hurting the NBA All-Star game. These guys just need to play. What is the biggest gripe that fans have after the NBA All-Star game. These guys aren't trying. And then remember Kobe. Remember Michael Jordan and how hard they play. These players just don't do that. The NBA All-Star game, the way it would normally go, and you know this, early in the game, it will be an exhibition, right? We're going to throw up lobs. We're going to jack up deep three-pointers. We're going to show off a little bit, get the crowd into it. But when we go get long, whatever point that is, second quarter, halftime, third quarter, whatever it might be, now we lock in. And where it's gotten lost is, I think that's what people want to see. When you have the talent that the NBA has, you're never going to be able to lock down each other to the point where we're going to be watching an 85-80 game. These players are just too talented. But when you don't play any defense, then it becomes 180 to 170. And it's not fun. The best thing that the NBA could do is just have their players play. And maybe that's what Kevin Durant's thinking. But I think he's somewhat complicit in this. He's played in all-star games. These all-star games that we're saying aren't fun to watch. Just play hard. Just give us the product that you give us on a nightly basis. And that will be enough. We don't need these goofy rules. We don't need the Elam rule or whatever it's called, the Elam ending. We don't need a fantasy draft. We just want, to Kevin Durant's point, East versus West of two teams playing hard. But they can't get that. And that's also kind of leading into one of the big stories in the NBA this week, which is their ratings are down. And people are trying to theorize what it is. I think what I just said about the All-Star game is part of the problem. There is a perception from people that the effort is not there compared to what it was even a few years ago. Right? And when I say effort, I think it's all encompassing. Something like load management. And I know I just said that the Nuggets should think about load managing Jamal Murray moving forward. I'm not, there's always trade-offs, right? What can be good for a team and their prospects of winning a championship can run counter to what is best for the league during the regular season. But just the idea that you may not, it feels, and all this is perception. It's not like television viewers are crunching the numbers. It's all perception. Don't you just feel like you're going to tune into an NBA game and you know at least one of the people that you recognize from one or both of the teams is not going to play? Don't you just kind of feel that on a nightly basis? That one of the stars that you would tune in to see, you're like, I bet he's not playing. Or he's actually not playing. It feels like these guys don't play. And then you watch the product and people are talking about the three-point shooting, and I would agree, but it's the perception that it doesn't take as much effort to put up a three, to just chuck up threes all game long. And if you're not the Splash Brothers, if you're not the Golden State Warriors, and you're not knocking them down at a historic rate, then it's not appealing. It's not an appealing style of play. But I think that's the biggest issue that the NBA is facing right now. And it It is merely a perception. The effort's just not there. The effort's not going to be there for players to play through injury. The effort's not going to be there to attack the rim. They're just going to settle for threes. The effort's not going to be there defensively. I think that perception is what's hurting the NBA more than anything else. They talk about, oh, the presidential election. Well, is the NHL suffering from the same problem? I know they have a lot of teams based in Canada, but I think ratings are up in the United States with the NHL. I don't know that that's that. It feels like an easy place to go. Well, there was a presidential election. People more locked into that. I don't know, maybe a little bit. I think there's just the perception that you're not going to get the effort that you used to get when you tuned into an NBA game. And that is a massive problem. And Adam Silver can do all he wants. He can create a task force to look into and punish teams for sitting players when they're not supposed to. You can mandate that they play in prime time. It's not going to matter. There's just this perception right now from people, the sports viewing public, that I'm not getting the product I used to get. Not from a talent perspective. Everyone can acknowledge that the talent in today's NBA is greater than it has been at any point in its history. But these players like Jordan, like Kobe, that would just go hard every night and would play through injury. It fair or foul, there is a perception that players today won't do that. And why am I going to invest my time when I'm going to get one star is going to be out? It's going to be a bunch of threes and not much defense. And the only way that the NBA can change that hearts and minds in that way is just guys taking it upon himself. It's like the NBA All-Star game. Nothing the NBA does from a gimmick standpoint is going to draw people in. Unless Taylor Swift is going to pick up a basketball, then maybe you might get people tuning in. It's on the players. Play hard, play defense, treat it like a real game, and all the NBA All-Star Game's ills will be fixed. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on NBA's changes to the All-Star Game. Take a break. I have more Drive Time Sports after this. Were you talking about the product during the season? You don't like any? I mean, if I had to, I think baseball, and I give baseball credit, they've come up with some ideas. To me, baseball is the worst sport to watch. It just is. And there's a lot of reasons for it, and not everything is about pace of play or how long it takes or whatever. Just baseball to me is the least enjoyable of the major sports to watch. I'd probably go the NBA, right? I mean, there's a gap between baseball and then everybody else in terms of unwatchable, unwatchab unwatchability. So I would say it's baseball, then it's basketball, then hockey, then football. When I take everything into account, the the style, the how compelling the product is, how interested I am based on the teams that I care about, all that kind of stuff. That's how I would rank them. So I think there is, and I don't know that that would have been the case 5 to 10 years ago for me. I think the two sports, I think I've shifted a little bit in terms of what I enjoy watching, and I think that's natural. But if you would ask me 10 years ago, I would say baseball, basketball are the two sports that I enjoy watching the most. 10 years later, it's football and hockey. Basketball, I still very much enjoy, but I find myself gravitating towards those other two sports. And then baseball is a distant fourth. So is that just my particular taste, or is there something to it? I think it's a little bit of both. And clearly, given the numbers, the ratings for the NBA, I mean, you can't say it's just the sport of basketball, right? You just can't say that, because look at what has happened with the WNBA, right? I know the audiences are smaller, but they're smashing records. Clearly, there is an appetite for basketball in our country. So is it fatigue? Or were we so locked in the WNBA by the time the NBA rolls around, we're like, I'm tired of basketball? I think for some people, perhaps. But I think it's the product that the NBA is putting out there. People are watching the WNBA, and let's be real about it. They're watching Caitlin Clark and they're saying, this is entertaining. This is appealing to me. This style of basketball. I don't know if the NBA has those kind of things, the style of play, the star power. That was the thing I didn't mention. You know, it's been LeBron and Steph and KD for years in that order, probably, and now they're all aging out. They're all on teams that are, I mean, especially LeBron. Like, when there was, you can make the argument that LeBron going to LA was great for the NBA at the time, right? It may be the worst thing for the NBA that he's in LA, because they're not a serious contender. they're the basketball version of the Cowboys. They're relevant just because of their brand and not because of their chances of competing. And LeBron is just wasting away in his last few years in the league. And I don't want to get into a big whole thing about whose fault that is. It's LeBron's decision. Yes, LeBron has orchestrated, some of the moves that the Lakers have made, the priority to appease him rather than what really will make the Lakers good again. I get all that. But from an NBA perspective, having LeBron on a team that has zero chance of competing for a title hurts the product. That's your most recognizable player. Whether you love him or whether you hate him, LeBron is box office. But if the team he's on isn't relevant in terms of the NBA championship landscape, then how far does 39-year-old LeBron take it? And he's playing great. It's not his play that is keeping the Lakers from being a contender. But I just, it's a lot of things, right? It's never just one thing. It's a lot of things. The star, let's be real about this. LeBron stands alone, even above Steph Curry, in terms of the marketing and the attention and everything like that. But Steph's somewhere in that conversation. Their biggest star for 20 years is aging out on a team that has no chance of winning a title. But one of the things I put at the top of my list is I just don't think that people tune into the NBA and feel like they're going to get the effort level, the commitment that they got when they watched not just Michael, but even Kobe. It's a different NBA, and I don't know that it's for the better. Now, I'm not out on the NBA. I still consume plenty of NBA content. Still like the NBA. I still very much watch the NBA. I'm just trying to, from people I've heard from and just kind of seeing some of the sentiment out there, I think that's a prevailing reason. Tom says NBA most unwatchable for me. The way it has devolved into a three-point and dunk contest is horrible. It's not fun to watch. WNBA plays more team game. Football and hockey would be 1-2 for me also. And I agree. And with women and men's basketball, they're very much different sports, but they're still basketball. Right? People make the connection and they compare and contrast. But look at where I am today. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, getting ready to call a women's basketball game. And I like the Air Force men's basketball team and I like men's college basketball. But I'm telling you, this is, if I had to choose, I'd choose this one. And it's this, and it's starting, the pendulum's starting to swing a little bit when it comes to the professional game. Right? And I would watch the WNBA before, but come on, compared to what I've been watching over the past season, it's night and day. And that's a credit to Caitlin Clark. But I watched the WNBA and I watched the NBA, and I'm with you, Tom. Now, there aren't as many storylines. There's not the local interest in the WNBA in Colorado, right? So there's a lot of reasons why the NBA is still. I watch more NBA than WNBA, but in terms of the style of play, and it's I'm not trying to say one's right and one's wrong necessarily. It's a preference, and what you get from the WNBA. Now they go overboard at times, certainly, and that's what the whole summer was about: is how teams are going after Caitlin Clark. But you like the fact that these players are playing physical, playing defense, driving to the rim, attacking the rim. It's a little bit like the NBA used to be for many of us growing up. So I don't think people are out on the larger sport of basketball, because then the WNBA would not be drawing like it is. But there are some issues with the NBA for sure. So again, tonight, Oregon and Air Force, 7:00 right here on Extra Sports 1300. One other thing I wanted to bring up. So first of all, credit to the New York Yankees for going out and doing exactly what they should have done after losing Juan Soto. They go out and get Max Fried. I think it was an overpay, but you got Max Fried. Makes you a better team. Today they land Cody Bellinger. Right? So the Yankees are doing some things to say, hey, we lost out on Juan Soto, but we're taking the 700 and whatever million and we're redistributing it through other free agents to try and make our team overall better. And that's what the Yankees needed to do after losing out on Juan Soto. None of that is what I want to talk about. Cody Bellinger's wife used to date Giancarlo Stanton. Do you think that they talked to Stanton? Not to get his blessing, right? If Aaron Judge used to date Cody Bellinger's wife, then I would say you want to run it by Aaron Judge and see where he's at, and maybe even get his approval. With Giancarlo Stanton, he doesn't have the standing with the Yankees anymore to be able to say anything. But do you don't think Brian Cashman, just to see, like, is this going to be okay? Just to get a sense, get the temperature. I would think the human psychology aspect, you would at least want to, even though it might be a little awkward, like, hey, Giancarlo, you good with this? How do you feel about it? Now, that winning should be placed above everything. And Cody Bellinger makes the Yankees a better team after losing Juan Soto. The Yankees without Juan Soto makes them better. Cody Bellinger's not better than Juan Soto. But that's going to be, and it's all over social media today. Some fun spring training interviews, to be sure. Will they have a locker next to each other? Like, these kind of conversations are going to happen. But hey, they needed a Cody Bellinger, and they got one. Figure out the rest of the stuff later. Before I go, because I got to walk down the street to Matthew Knight Arena to call the game tonight, QC Kinetics. 2025 coming up right around the corner, right? Or December 17th. The new year's coming up. why would you start 2025 dealing with the same joint pain that's been bothering you in 2024? Like, isn't that what we all do? We make these resolutions to make the next year better. Well, if you're dealing with chronic joint pain, that's an easy way to be better. And you might say, well, I've tried surgery, I've tried drugs, I've tried steroids, hasn't worked. Well, that's because they're not attacking the root cause of the problem. QC Kinetics cellular therapies do treat the root cause. And that's why they have thousands of satisfied patients across the country, tens of thousands, that are raving about their results. It's an all natural treatment to restore your joints and get you lasting relief from joint pain. And all you need to do to start is get a free consultation. That's it. 719 347 1988. QC Kinetics, 719 347 1988. It has been my pleasure to serve you today. Join me at 7, won't you, for Air Force in Oregon. If I don't talk to you then, talk to you tomorrow or later this week from Portland. See ya.